I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with David France, the director of Welcome to Chechnya. And David, this film, as I was just telling you, really just um, kind of just reached in and gutted me. And so I guess where I want to start is um, in making this film. Were there moments where you were like, I don't know? Were there moments that almost were too tough for you in terms of filming it?
Oh, it was a terrible story. I guess I knew I was going into a reporting and filming project that was going to be one of the most difficult in my career. It's a genocide, and there's no way you can chronicle and document a genocide without knowing that you're going to, suffer. And obviously, I didn't suffer the way the victims of this anti-LGBTQ campaign in Chechnya are suffering and have suffered. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough to take that journey with them, and really brave of them, I think, to invite me to join them on it. And but I also want to point out that while I was really braced for this journey into ugliness, I was also really surprised and impressed by the other things that I found there, which are in this underground network, this expression of love, this like real, like almost weaponizing of love to on the part of these activists who have just turned their lives inside out to at great mortal peril to rescue people that they don't even know in this expression of the love of humanity. I think that's what I kept thinking when I saw it, was that this is really a kind of an expression of love like I've never seen before. And that's what I thought was really remarkable. For me, that was the takeaway, startling revelation.
And I think for a lot of people, even for a lot of those of us in the gay community, there is this sort of, bubble that we live in where we're not aware of what's happening in Chechnya. Can you just lay the foundation for people who maybe aren't familiar with it?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is a crime against humanity, really, that started in early 2017. It was revealed by an investigative reporter for a Russian independent newspaper in April of that year, and the news of of what was happening there went around the world, and it was really ugly. It's a campaign being run by the government of this regional republic within the Russian Federation to round up and eliminate all LGBTQ members of that ethnic minority. It's a liquidation campaign like the kind that we haven't seen since Hitler. And the only place in the world that this is being carried out, a government dictated campaign as the head of the government there calls it, to cleanse the blood of the Chechen people. It's absolutely diabolical. It's obviously, even if it were not diabolical, it would not be possible to eliminate queer people from a bloodline in any way. And that's exactly what he's been engaged in. The world in 2017 expressed shock and dismay at the news, but the political pressure really was not there, and it's allowed this genocide to continue unabated since then. And that is why I thought it was going to be important to try to bring more attention to this story in a powerful way. And Tony, the reason I think that it failed to capture the attention even within the queer community is because we didn't have any images from what was happening there, and that was out of design, because the people who are fleeing this persecution are being hunted around the globe. That's how serious this campaign is. They can't appear openly in a documentary. They couldn't even give a press conference. They couldn't tell their stories in any way, and that limited the kind of the connection that we might have with what was happening there, and even a sense around the world of the magnitude of what was happening. And so I wanted to see what I could do to try to lift that up, break through that news cycle and see what I could do to impact the campaign to bring attention and political pressure and justice to what's happening there.
It struck me so much, not just the individuals that are fleeing, and you mentioned this earlier, but the people who are basically a part of this network. Um, I think it's an apt comparison. It's almost like an underground railroad of getting people out of Chechnya. Um, why were they willing to go on camera? Because I would imagine that the risk to them is just as great.
By the time I met them, and the story broke in early 2017, as I said. I met them in July of 2017. By that time, they had been engaged in this, life or death struggle for many months. They invited me to come into their network and embed there, which I did for 18 months. At the end of that 18-month period, I reapproached them and said, "Do you need to be disguised in this film, or do you want me to use your face and real identities?" And at that point, they realized that there was so much of the work that they were doing was already known to the people in the Chechen government that they really were not safe, and to go public through the film added to their safety. It made them made it less likely that they would be picked off without their adversaries knowing that the world would be paying attention. They wanted and needed that kind of platform in order to give themselves some modicum of security around the work that they're continuing to do. They're still doing that work today. It's important to say this, Johnny. This genocide is going on today, and they are just as desperate, the activists who are running this underground network, as they were 3.5 years ago when I first started working with them, and just as kind of endangered. And so I think what I learned from them was that the film is a powerful defense, a kind of a shield for them. But more than that, it's the way that they're now conveying to political leaders around the world, diplomats and others, the grotesque need for intervention.
Why do you think the world has, for the most part, stayed silent? I mean, it's not like this is a secret or anything. And like you say, it is still going on. And yet there seems to be so much inaction. Why do you think that's still happening?
Well, it's kind of hard. It's like when you recover from a terrible illness, it's easy to forget what some of those circumstances were. In January of 2017, we had a change in federal government here in the United States. And the Trump administration came in with its bizarre grip on the national attention, international attention, really, and especially the attention of the media. And I think we all became distracted to the extreme by every tweet coming out of the West Wing of the White House. And so when several months later, just a couple months later, when this news broke, it was impossible to gain purchase on the attention of reporters and the press. And I think that was the big opportunity for that Ramzan Kadyrov in Chechnya seized for continuing his campaign. And Putin allows it to go on because it serves Putin to keep Kadyrov busy and engaged in attacking Putin's enemies as well as his own. And so I think there was a real dereliction of duty on the part of the press, quite frankly. And I have called them out on that before. And so when the film came out last June, it made its first broadcast then. Suddenly, we started seeing people in leadership around the globe start taking action. Even the Trump administration issued its first round of sanctions against the Chechen government in the 3 or 4 weeks after the film came out. And we've seen sanctions levied by the Biden administration and by the European Union, the UK, Canada. We've seen great action following the work that the activists are doing, using the film to help them gain the attention and sympathies of people in power who can actually, enact a sort of legal response that might someday be able to gain the kind of traction that we need in order to stop this. At least to stop this, Tony, if not to bring Kadyrov to justice, which I would hope we'd be able to do someday.
There certainly seems to be. I mean, obviously, much has been made about the visual effects, which we will get into. But just logistically, what was the logistical process of embedding with these people and capturing this footage?
It was, the first obstacle that we had in even beginning the project was to find a way that we could be sure that we were behaving in a manner that was not going to expose people to further injury or risk. And we brought in outside consultants to help us on security protocols for entering into the underground network, security protocols for handling the footage, so that we could get it in and out of those safe houses safely, and that if we ever lost hold of it, that it would not be easily accessed in a way that might give away the identities of the people inside or the locations where we had been filming. And the big one, though, was trust. How do we work with the people who had just survived unspeakable torture and meet their security and trust issues head on. And we decided that this was not a simple matter of consent, the way most documentaries just you fill out a piece of paper and get a signature and then you march forward. We thought in this case that it would be too easy for people to feel, intimidated or not thoughtful enough about making their first agreements with us. So we established a system we called informed consent, where every time we met again with people, we would talk to them again about their security issues and again get them to reaffirm their interest in participating in the film. And that included our promise to them that we would disguise them and disguise their voices and disguise their faces, and that we would return to them with our proposal about how we were going to do that and get their sign off, their green light on that. And then we would return to them with the footage that we were using of their lives in the film for them to do a top to bottom, pixel by pixel, frame by frame evaluation for their own sense of comfort that we had addressed every security issue that they might have in that footage. And if we hadn't, that we would go back and readdress it. So for us, that was the big issue, was really this ongoing partnership with everybody who was in the film to make sure that we were doing nothing that was getting out ahead of their own comfort levels.
And that is, I assume, where the visual use, I don't even know how to quite label it, because it's not just disguising, but it's disguising in a completely different way. How did that even come about? Because it really has, I think a lot of people have rightfully talked about it revolutionizing the way the documentaries are made.
Well, so let me tell you what really is what you're seeing on the screen. You're seeing the actions that I saw, the responses, the emotions, the micro expressions that I saw. You're hearing the stories, the conversations, the utterances that I heard, but it's all through a replacement face and a replacement voice. And by that I mean there were 23 people in the film whose faces needed to be disguised, whose anonymity needed to be protected. And I went to a group group of other people, 23 other people, and who were mostly queer activists, mostly in New York, people who had already joined demonstrations that showed that they were committed to denouncing what was happening inside Russia, that they were interested in queer refugee issues around the globe. I found most of them over Instagram, and I said, "Would you lend me your face as a kind of an act of activism? Lend your face to as a human shield to cover the people who are in the film." And that's what you're looking at, is those donor faces. And to get them, I brought them into a studio, ingested them in this kind of this data uploading of their faces into an algorithm which we had built to match their face on this pixel basis over the face of the people who are in the film. So nothing has changed except the skin. And that was the most fascinating part of how this worked. And we found a way to do it through deep machine learning that allows you to see a human being on the screen, to experience their journey. And their journey, as you see in the film, involves a journey of love for some people, a journey of horror for some people, a journey of reckoning for this terrible betrayal that they had to experience, not only by their government, but by the other members of their kind of cultural minority of the Chechen people, sometimes even their own families, who have been bent and folded into this campaign to so-called cleanse the blood. And we're able to watch it openly and freely and genuinely because we've been able to do this, digital face transplant. And I was able to bring this back to the people, as I said, and say, this is what we're going to do. Like, actually what I did is my first pass was just a single still image with another face over theirs. And I would say, who is this? Can you identify this person? And so many of them were not able to identify this image that was basically them with someone else's skin on their face. And then when I showed them the scenes, just the howls of laughter and recognition that here's a person so unlike them, living their lives and speaking their truths, and able to do it in ways that would not draw any additional attention to them. So it was pretty wild that we were able to find this way to do this. I wanted to avoid those traditional uses of blurs and pixelization, because you can't really join a person who on a journey whose face you can't see. We're just human beings, need that connection, and this method finally allows that kind of connection to take place while still disguising people.
It feels like, with your previous two films, with How to Survive a Plague and Martha P. Johnson, it feels like, there's this journey through, kind of the queer experience. Is there going to be a point where you think, will we ever have to stop telling these stories? Because it seems like the community is constantly still under attack with all these anti-trans legislations in the United States right now. Where do you see the trajectory going?
Well, I think that, and I'm glad you mentioned the other two films, I think of them as being a trilogy, really, in a way, about activism, and about a certain kind of like radical queer activism that I think has changed the world and brought the world to new and different and better places. And that has been my motivation, really, to lift up and canonize the story of the activism within our community, and show that it is it's not just part of our queer history, but it's American history. It's the history of civilization. It really these really are moments in time where the fabric of history rippled in positive ways. It's everybody's history, and that's why I have been so taken by these stories of like real heroics and daring do, and because I think they teach us so much about who we are as people, um, and I think that's a gift that the queer movement has left for the rest of humanity.
It's an important history, and I'm very grateful for it. So, everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned with more interviews with contenders throughout the season. David France, a pleasure. Thank you so much.